Someone once said, make your mess your message. American stand-up comedian, writer, actor Moshe Kasher, who went to his first therapy session at age 4, has managed to do that. He's turned his mess, his troubling early life, into a compelling, funny, irreverent, and informative, slightly unbelievable memoir. It is called Kasher in the Rye. It is my pleasure to welcome Moshe Kasher to Studio 4 to tell us more, and welcome to Vancouver.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure.
Now, I'm sure every interviewer has said to you, this sounds like it's not true, this memoir. You know, I know it's a memoir, but it's pretty unbelievable.
Well, I have the luck of having a mother that is, you know the show, have you seen the show Hoarders? Mm-hmm. My mother
Yes.
could be on that show, and so I have just stacks and stacks and stacks of evidence that all this stuff took place. So if any of your viewers don't believe it, I'd be willing to send them volumes of information that this stuff truly happened.
And your mom was a bit of a hippie.
She was indeed, yeah. She was a bit of a hippie. She's also a deaf woman. She can't hear, and she likes hip-hop music. So, well, one of the advantages of listening to hip-hop is having a deaf mom.
I would think.
You can listen to anything you want without her commenting
And she
on the
doesn't
content.
know, but maybe she feels the vibration.
Yeah, she would just be driving along
Perhaps.
happily as my brother and I rapped horrible misogynist raps next to her, and she would say, I like this, I can feel the bass. And we'd be like, yeah, we can feel the bass too.
Too, and so can the neighbors.
Yeah, indeed.
And then there was father, and he couldn't hear either.
My father was also deaf, and they met at the World Games for the Deaf, which is a very quiet affair. I'm joking. It's very loud.
I got it.
Yeah, good. And my father was also a Hasidic Jew, just to add a little bit of strange narrative magic
Right.
to the story.
So Orthodox
Yes.
dad wanted you to be a rabbi, probably.
Something like that. But a stand-up comedian in the Jewish sort of life experience is similar to a rabbi.
Yes, and then there was a brother in the mix, and he became a rabbi.
Yeah, luckily for the family, my brother did the right thing. He became a rabbi. I became a stand-up comedian, so it's like a Jewish seesaw. It's very good.
No kidding, but Dad left the building fairly early in the marriage game.
That's true. Well, Mom left the building. Mom said we were going
Okay.
on vacation to Oakland, and we just never came back. And
I
so
see.
I guess these days you might call it a kidnapping, but in those days it was just called going on a very long vacation.
Very long vacation, and Dad is going somewhere else, and then Dad met a wife in New York.
That's right. She was a lady from a group of Hasidic Jews known as the Satmar Hasidim, who are the most extreme
Strict.
and strange of all the Hasidic groups. Just to say it again, of all the fur hat wearing, gown, and Amish bearded people, my father joined up with the group that was the most outside the margins of society, which would be like being among the fattest of all Walmart shoppers. It's a high level of religiosity.
I get it. And so you, the lost boy.
Well, I found
Really?
myself, lost in that middle place between Jewish and not Jewish, deaf and not deaf. Moved to Oakland, so it was black and not black, and I found myself in that middle place. And I found a group of kids that were lost too, and we found a way out behind the school.
Yes, you found a lot of trouble. And you
Indeed.
were white trying to be black, sort of.
Yeah.
But you got into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, when you're 12 and 13 years old doing that kind of stuff, you don't really, you know how a drug addict sometimes loses themselves. Well, I had no self to lose, so I dove straight into the deepest pool of insanity. And very quickly I was locked in mental institutions and drug rehab and severely emotionally disturbed schools, which are just as pleasant as they sound, and I was lost, for sure.
And when you went to one of those schools, you knew how to read the people.
Oh, yeah.
Because you'd had some experience.
Well, when you become a person that's institutionalized and you get used to being institutionalized, you start to get a kind of skill set. If you have a keen mind, which thankfully at the time I still did, you get experience with sort of walking into a room and smelling the flavor of insanity that you're interacting with. And so some places, like in rehab, I would be the class clown, which is, eventually became a career for me, thank
Right.
God. And some places you would smell and you'd say, oh no, this is dangerous. Keep your head down, be quiet, and try to get out of this. And so places like Seneca Center for the Severely Emotionally Disturbed School, which had a padded cell in the classroom, and if you spoke out of turn, even one word, they would tell you to line up and put your nose up against the concrete pylon and not speak for 10 minutes, or you would be sent to the padded cell. In those places, you kept your mouth shut.
And you were mouthy.
It
So
was
that was difficult.
Indeed, yes.
But did you also think that you were the sane one in the room at a deep level, that really you shouldn't be where you were? at times?
Yeah, that was the difficulty, was that I knew simultaneously that I was an insane person, and I knew also that I was not, and that I didn't belong there. And so having that kind of bifurcated understanding of yourself, like I knew that I was acting insane, but I also knew that I was this real person that didn't need to be in these places. I kept waiting for someone to burst in the door and say, "Mr. Kasher, we've made a grave mistake. Come with me right this way."
You're
But
a
they never
perfect
came.
boy.
That's right.
Your mother doesn't quite think so. She doesn't know what to do with you because she
right.
tried to save you many times.
My poor mother, yeah. My mom would send me to different levels of therapy, 4-year-old therapy, and then group therapy, and family therapy, and rehab. At a certain point, I was in therapy 8 times a week.
8 times a week. Well, what do they tell you in therapy at 4? Do you remember?
I think that he would just hand me a Nerf sword, and I would just beat him as savagely as I could around the legs, buttocks, and genitalia, and then he would, I guess, take notes on my form. That's how it worked.
I see. And what about drawing? Did he make you draw pictures or look at the Rorschach blot?
Oh,
or
I've looked at Rorschach blots before. They're very unfair tests. They're very unfair. You can't pass that test.
Especially if you're an artist.
That's right.
Yes. Now, you say in Kasher and the Rye, love the title, by the way.
Thank you.
You didn't have to call, well, Selinger, I guess, isn't around, but you didn't have to call anybody to use it.
I was hoping that they would be upset, but apparently they've remained largely silent on the issue. But I was hoping they would give me some publicity. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
But no, there is another book called Catcher in the Rye. I don't know if your viewers know about that. This is a better book, I would say. I'm kidding.
I would say
I'm
by
kidding.
far, by far. One day, every school child will have to read this one instead of that Catcher book.
That is my hope.
But you say in Kasher and the Rye that you found your calling at 12, which was to stay high and stay drunk forever.
Yeah, that's a strange set of motivations for a 12-year-old, isn't it?
Yes, and young.
But that was, I think, the message there was that, I was stuck in that in-between place where I felt not enough. I didn't feel smart enough or deaf enough or black enough or cool enough or anything. And when you find drugs, if you are like me, you feel like enough. You feel enough, and that's why I felt like that's all that I wanted out of life, which is a sad thing to be a 12-year-old, and that's what you want out of life.
And the only way you can escape is with the drug, really.
That's right.
From what kind of pain? What was it like? You had buddies. They're doing drugs, too.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's, as we know, the double-edged sword of drugs, they give you an illusion of feeling okay, but even as they're making you feel okay, they're also destroying you without you quite paying attention to it. And so, it did not, in fact, I talk about this in the book, it did not, in fact, heal the pain. What it did was it was more of a painkiller. Like you take a pill and you ease the pain, but the problem with that is if you're walking around wounded, and you take a painkiller, well, then you're allowed to walk upright without, wincing and holding back is what you should be doing. You should be limping, but in fact, I was walking upright. And of course, that wound ripped open deeper and deeper, and I had to take more and more of this painkiller until I was just shoveling it into me, and I couldn't take enough to not feel the pain. Of course, what I needed was not a painkiller, but something to heal that wound, something to make the pain go away.
Yes. And your friends, you had friends who, one escaped. He went to live with the wealthy cheerleaders.
Right.
Your first best pal.
That's right, Richard, yeah.
Richard. And he got out of Oakland. And North Oakland, to set the scene,
Sure.
was a hardscrabble place when you were growing up.
Right. Oakland is a strange and violent and odd place where everybody wants to be tough and everyone wants to be black in Oakland. That's part of the narrative, and we all definitely did. But I had a kid growing up, Richard, his mother was a drug addict and probably worse, and he moved out to the suburbs. And when he found out that I had fallen in with this group of kids, he said, "You have to choose me or the drugs." And I never saw Richard again.
But you found other pals.
That's true.
Some with some very interesting names.
Yeah, like what? What do you got for me?
Well, there was the bomb guy. What was his name?
Sean the Bomb?
the Bomb, the strength of King Kong
That's right.
guy.
Yeah, I'm Sean the Bomb with the strength of King Kong. That's right.
And Joey Salante, I love that
Joey
name.
Salante, Little Mikey Rip It Up, and Frohawk, who was a man who lived in the sewers, literally lived in the sewers underneath Oakland.
In Oakland.
There was a drainage ditch that you walked down about a quarter of a mile with a candle and some hairspray so that you could torch any tarantulas that you might see. And about a quarter of a mile down, there was a little antechamber where he lived with the other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Really? And what were you doing in the sewer?
We were sleeping and smoking and drinking and having fun.
And just pushing the edge.
That's right. I lived on the edge. But the book is funny. It's important to note it's a comedy.
No, it is a comedy. It's, well, you know, Kerouac said, if you tell a true story, you can't be wrong.
That's right, yeah.
Which is true. But the one harrowing experience that sticks out for me was when you're in the tunnel.
Oh, in the
with
subway
the gang.
train. That's right,
The
yeah.
little gang of thieves.
Well, speaking of antechambers and tunnels, we heard that there was a room in this subway tunnel about a mile in, and we were always looking for places to hide, like Huckleberry Finn. We would tromp around looking for strange places to be, and we jumped over this, cyclone fencing. We would throw a rug over it and jump over, and there was a very small walkway about a foot wide. And I was overweight as a kid, and so they told me, "You fats, get at the back of the line." And so I did, and we would just walk straight ahead towards this room, and then we felt from the back of the tunnel, the air sucked out of the tunnel and got warm all of a sudden, and we thought, uh-oh, something's wrong, and we could feel the rumbling, and we thought someone screamed, uh-oh, train, and then it was there, just whoosh, 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 I mean, right in front of me, and I could see the commuters' faces as they passed by, and I thought, what an odd thing. And then the train stopped, and the conductor looked out and thought, what are these teenagers doing in my train tunnel? And someone screamed train, and we all turned and ran out the way we'd come. But of course, the bad news is now Fats was at the beginning of the line.
Right, the fat kid is running as fast as he's ever run. I'm
as I
thinking,
could.
and the other kids are saying, hey, Fats.
Run! Yeah.
So did they call you Moshe? What did they call you? Mark, Moshe?
Well, Mark was my slave name. No, Mark was my my English name. And when I turned 16 and I got out of this life, I went to rehab for the last time at almost 16. I had a change of identity that was obvious, and I started going by my middle name, Moshe.
Okay. Yeah. And how many times did you try and change for your parents, for your mother or for your father?
I tried to change for every reason I could 1,000 times over. It was like Groundhog's Day, you know?
Right.
Every day you wake up and it's the last day, and then you try to change, and then you wake up and it's the last day. Until you get a little window of opportunity to jump through. I have a friend that says when those windows open up, you better go through because they don't stay open, and sometimes they close behind you, and thankfully I walked through.
Through an open window, because you've been clean and sober since 17?
15.
15.
Yeah, I believe it.
Well, that's
or not.
right. You started early.
I did indeed.
Okay. We'll come back with Moshe Kasher. He's in Vancouver for 3 gigs, looks like to me, 3rd, 4th, 5th. The Comedy Mix on Burrard Street. You've seen him on Jimmy Fallon and other shows, I bet.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, and when we come back, we'll talk more about Kasher in the Rye and his amazing journey so far.